So we're super stoked to welcome Dafi all the way from across the pond. And I just wanted to let you all know briefly to stay on top of our social media. If you want to find out about more fun events like this, we've got another salon coming up. It's going to be a hybrid, in-person and online salon with Vivian Sming, who was our curatorial fellow. And that's coming up when, Stu? Like in a week? February 1st?
Couple weeks.
February 1st.
February 1st.
February 1st.
So be sure to check that one out. And then also stay on top of our Type West programming, because we've got a bunch of really cool public workshops on the horizon as well, both online and in person. So without further ado, let me turn you over to Rob, and he'll say anything that I forgot to say.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for coming. This is minor correction. We've had a couple of events in the new space. We've had two exhibit openings, but this is the first time we've had a lecture in this space. And we used to do it kind of regularly at the old space as well as at the San Francisco Public Library. And we'll probably be doing a mix of that going forward, but it's really nice to do one of these again. It's been 3 or 4 years. So I asked to introduce Dafi because I have a story to tell about him.
Okay.
Which is, I mean, it's a relatively straightforward and prosaic story, but I think it says something important about it. So the first thing I knew of Dafi was the book, which was published by Lars Muller in 2017, and it had come out, and I pre-ordered it, arrived, I looked at it, and I thought, oh, that's great. And then later that year, I happened to be in the UK, and I went to Reading to visit the program. And it was the week before the program was to start in the fall. And Jerry Leonidas, who runs it, was giving a tour of the archives to about, I don't know, half of the students that had arrived at that time. And there's Dafi. So, and we hadn't really met prior to that, but I think you knew of the archive. I certainly knew of your work. I didn't expect to see you there, and I didn't realize who you were for a minute or two. But the point is, he's already got a published monograph, and he's going back to school to learn how to design type. That says something. You see that care for learning and for craft in everything that he does. So please, welcome, Dafi.
Thanks a lot for this introduction, and it was really funny because the archive Rob was referring to is like bookshelves, and it's tight and everything, and I buried myself in this book, in these bookshelves, to do some research for my thesis that was on plastic type as letterpress printing type that was produced not from wood but from alternative materials. So my name is Dafi. I grew up in Switzerland, in Zurich, or close to Zurich. I studied in Zurich visual communications, and I'm 40 years old, and I have my own letterpress studio that I've been running since 2009. During my studies, I made an internship with Hatcho Print in Nashville, Tennessee, and I mean, before that, at my school, we would do some letterpress printing, but it was very design focused. So we would say, like, we would design a business card in an evening class, and that means we would design from 6 p.m. till 11 p.m., and I would design, just work on iterations and variations of that one design that I would finally typeset with Univers in, I don't know, 10 points. I would design this for 17 evenings to then print 25 proofs, just to get one business card for my portfolio. It was not my business card, because we were not allowed to do our own work. It needed to be fictional, because we did, or my professor didn't want any emotions to be connected to that business card other than I'm dedicated to design the best business card that I could do for a dental technician, a fictional dental technician. All right, so then I came to Hat Show Print in 2008 when I was still a student, and it was a little bit the opposite of that. We would sketch up a business card like that size, and it would take us maybe 10 to 15 minutes. After the 15 minutes, the poster would have to be finished as a sketch. And then you could jump right away on a composing table and you would start typesetting the wood type that you would use for this poster. You would pull a proof just with a brush, not on a proof press, just with a brush, and you would photocopy this down to letter size and fax it to the client and say like, hey, the first line is going to be green and the last line is going to be red or whatever. Once you get the approval from the client, you would typeset right away, or you would separate and you would start printing. We would print maybe 300 posters in 3 colors, means I crank on a hand crank press, I crank 900 proofs, maybe in a day, maybe a little more than a day. And the elements I was using on a Hat Show Print poster were repeated because that's the quality of their archive. You work with the same archive that so many artists have worked with before. And you create something new that so many artists have used similar elements, same typefaces, same image cuts, and you repeat that, but you create something new. Complete different approach from what I do or what I learned as a digital designer, where you don't want to steal elements, where you don't want to reuse elements, you just basically want to reinvent the whole story all the time. So I came back after my internship and I told my professor, this is what I want to be doing. I want to do like hatch posters. And we had a laser cutter at our university. It was brand new. It was bought by the industrial design department, but we from the graphic design department were allowed to also use it. And I was soon enough or early enough to block out that laser cutter for 2 months. And I just said I need it for my diploma project. So I started producing wood type. And the first letters I made were basically, let's say, Gothic faces, beautiful old American typefaces that you would see, maybe a shadowed face or something like that. And my professor said, that's cute, but it's not really new. You have a brand new tool, and what is wood type if you translate this to the 21st century? Is it really still the same type that we've seen in the 1860s? Is that all we can do? So that stuck with me. And I made type that was not wood type anymore. I called the project wood type now, but it was sometimes plexiglass, it was vinyl stickers, and whatever I could come up with. And that stuck with me even after I graduated and I started my business making letterpress work, letterpress posters that work in a present context in Switzerland. Because in Switzerland I cannot produce, let's say, retro visuals and keep or survive with that. That just doesn't work. I have to make contemporary design, and actually nobody really cares if it's letterpress printed or not. But because I use letterpress technology, I have to work with the restrictions of what I can do, and that is the focus of my work. So I'm going to be talking, how much time do we have?
Well, we have until 7.
Okay, all right, so we have to be fast. So that's fine. Perfect, perfect. So I'm going to be talking about some of my poster projects in this presentation, and since it's such a perfect size group, you're very welcome to ask questions whenever they occur. This is a poster I designed for a band called Über You. It's a punk band from Zurich, and the punk band has that weird language mix between German and English, and I basically translated that language mix into the poster copy. So Über You goes, Übersee would possibly translate into Über You goes overseas, but in the German language we say Übersee, so it's a language mix between German and English also, just like in their band name. And the band doesn't come up with that poster copy. They just say, hey, we go to these countries. And I say, well, what cities? Well, we're not 100% sure yet. And I'm like, well, do you know locations, like any venues, and they say, half of them are illegal, so we can't name them. So like, okay, we just name the countries, and we make it kind of a commemorative poster, and then they hung them up and just wrote down tonight here. That's how they were used. But what I want to say is, they don't come up with the poster copy, right? They just say like, we go to all these countries, say whatever you want to say. So this is part of my job to, I say, with a bad content, you can't make an excellent poster. You could make an average poster with bad content, but you need good words to make good typography. It's very important. I'm going to show a short production video of this, the process of making this poster. First, I'm printing the split fountain, so I have several colors in one run, and I'm just printing the border. It's just the border of this poster. Now I am reversing the split fountain, and I have the pink up and the orange over. I had it the other way around on the first run, and I'm printing the solid surface. So I have two reversed split fountains that I print the black background first. Then I go on a pantograph, and let me tell you the story here. I found this set of wood type at an old printer's, and he said like, well, I asked, can I buy this from you? And he said, no. Well, can I borrow it from you? Yes. The problem was, it was very old and it was warped. And you can't print it in perfect quality if it is warped. It will either way have a lot of distress on the surface, or it will leave an impression on the poster, which I don't want to have. So I basically said, I'm going to borrow it from you. I'm not even going to print it. I just make copies on my pantograph, and that's what I'm doing here. I use an original piece of his typeface here. I use a brand new board of pear wood down here, and I'm following with the tracer. I'm following the original on the right side, and on the left side is a router, and it does the exact same movements. I can scale down if I wanted to. This is a 1-to-1. You see I'm following the original E, and I make a copy down there. You have to be aware, all of the equipment I have at my studio, which is a lot, came from scrap. So here, a proof press is very expensive. In Switzerland, it's really not expensive. So I collected all of my equipment with a student's budget. This is the lockup. And then it's just one overprint. All right, I think that's good. So this is pretty traditional, right? It's just wood type. The only thing that is new is I make a fresh copy, so I have very smooth surfaces. That's a poster I did for Schule für Gestaltung Basel, SFG. Schule für Gestaltung is an important design school from Switzerland, and I had to come up with an idea what reflects the idea of designing, or what is the most basic idea of design. And for me, this was the brush stroke. So I'm working with the brush stroke. So how can I reproduce the brush stroke in letterpress print? I'm going to show also a short production video of this one. Be aware, what I am showing is just the production. I am not showing the design process. I'm not going to the studio and I just produce and they get whatever they want. I mean, this is an important paying client. There's like sketching, there might be analog, printing already. Then I scan that, I might make a Photoshop simulation of, see, this is roughly what it's gonna look like, but here you see the physical print of just one element, and then once the client agrees on that, then I'm going into production, which looks somehow like this. I'm using something like Elmer's glue and a brush. So developing such a technique takes something like 2 weeks, because I need to guarantee once I go on press, I can print the 850 posters that this client wanted. And you see I have several boards out there, because with the brush stroke you can only do it, you can't correct it much. Once the glue is dried, I take a chisel and I remove the wood or the parts that I don't want to have printed. I'll bring it up to type height.
I have a question, Dafi.
Yeah.
So that's what we're seeing there, the texture is the Elmer's glue.
Yes, this is the Elmer's glue. So the Elmer's glue leaves a profile that has different parts in height, and that traces as the brush stroke. So I'm making the brush stroke with glue, and it reproduces as a brush stroke in the image.
What else did you try?
For this one, I actually was pretty focused, and I just wanted to nail that thing.
The glue, though.
The glue, because I knew, I mean, you know, over the years you have your little backpack with little test prints, and you know there's going to be that one moment when I will pull out the Elmer's glue. But it's important because while you're developing such an idea, you might fall in love with that. It's like, it's just great, I want to do it now. But it might not be the right thing for this client. So it's very important for me to step back and, in that sense, kill your darling at some point and say like, okay, the moment is not right. But here the moment was right for it.
I have another question.
Yep.
So because the Elmer's glue is landing at different levels,
Yep.
how consistent are the prints?
Pretty much. The inconsistency would only be the amount of ink.
Right.
Because the impression is fixed and given,
Sure.
and I'm calibrating down to about 12 thousandths of an inch for this. It's not very, very precise, but pretty precise is what I need to have. 12 thousandths of an inch is about the difference between the highest part and the lowest part that is still printed. So that is pretty tight. You can also not make the profile needs to have that specific depth. If it's too shallow, it looks uniform. If
Right.
it's too deep, I will only have this little bevel printing, but not the strokes next to it.
Yeah.
These were something like bubbles. They were not actually bubbles, they were just like spots on the board of MDF that soaked up the glue a little more.
Why did you choose a lowercase f?
That's
Oh,
their
it is.
short. They
Oh,
have a
okay.
lowercase f. So it's FU. A school for designers would be the literal translation.
Ah, okay.
That was the envelopes that we sent them out with. And I just liked that they accepted that. You get an envelope that looks like somebody drove over with a car, right? They would accept that. It was just great. Therma was an industrial company in my region where my studio is. They have been around for about 80 years or 70 years. They started in 1908 until something like 78. So this was for a movie that was made about that company. They were making or producing electro heaters, stoves, and fridges. So they made electric devices that produced mainly heat. So that was the poster. And the hard thing is, if you have split fountains, remember how I did the Überu poster and I have one color on one side of the roller, the other on the other? I have to separate this form in a quite complicated way. For example, I have the M and the T on one form, and I print from yellow to pink. Then I separate the H and the A, and I print from pink to yellow on a different run. and then I flip the sheet around and I do from pink to yellow on the ER. This poster has about, I think it was about 15 runs for the small ones. The small ones were about that size. I didn't bring any of those, but I brought a large one also. And interestingly, on the large ones, the split fountains are in different directions than on the small ones. Can you see that the split fountains have different directions than they have on the small posters? And the reason for that was technical problems. That this is final size. I can only get this paper in this size. So let's say ER, I can only grip the paper on this size if I want it to be bleeding on either side. Just talking about ER. And that also defines the direction of the split fountain, which was different from the small ones. So I had to make a complete translation of this design to produce the large posters. Of course, we're going to look at the work that is here and that I also brought after the talk. Because the colors, it's just different on the screen.
Yeah, maybe I'll put this on the magnet board instead of here, unless you want to get more footprints
No, this
on
is
it.
perfect. This is
Okay.
perfect. Thank you. This is all hand-cut linoleum. So the whole poster is made with hand-cut linoleum. This is some metal type for the little tagline. And again, the photo is just of the small poster. The event or the movie event was on October 27th, but these posters, the large ones, are just commemorative posters. So they used these, the smaller ones, for advertising the event, and then they said, oh, the posters are great, we want some commemorative posters. So I only finished these just around Christmas. You can still smell them. Tunnel is a cultural venue called Tunnel. So they organize concerts, and they said, well, we would like to have a new program poster. They should be small, like this. And we're like, wouldn't it be great if we did something large? Yes, but we can't send folded posters that size to our club members. It just doesn't work, and we can't afford to print that many large posters. So I said, well then let's try and use the same lino cut for large and small posters. And this is the photo of the large poster, which is the same size as the Therma poster. So let me show you a little bit of the process here. You see, I have the small posters on top of the large one, and I did some left and right versions of this one. Me and my employees, we did a beautiful choreography for you to see how we did that. Yeah, it was a lot of practice. So I'm starting with the split fountain, and you've seen how that works. The difference from the first split fountain is that normally you would have 100% ink on this side and 100% of another color on the other side. But here I am printing 100% of ink at the top and 0 ink at the bottom. So I'm fading out to 0. I am printing now the split fountains for the large posters, but you have to be aware, and I'll stop here just for a second. I also printed the same split fountains going to the center. Means the split fountains were white on the top, white at the bottom, and pink in the center. I'm not showing this in the video, but you're gonna remember this when I get to that point. So these are the large posters, split fountains. Compare that to the digital sketch. A lot of the sketching is digital, obviously. I use some laser cut stencils to do the transfer. It's important for me that I want to choose the imperfections. So I could laser cut that, it's right there, but I prefer the imperfection of these very geometric shapes. I'm going back on the press. And these are the large posters that I'm going to finish later. Now the next step, I'm coming with these center split fountains and go on my cutter. Very modern. So you see the split fountain is in the center, or the pink is in the center. And I'm cutting these in halves. And these halves, I then finish just with the upper part of my lino cut. I don't even, I print on the cylinder, but I'm not using the lower part. I can use both sides, so I'm not wasting any of the paper. I'm just printing the upper part of my lino cut. And then I cut these in halves. And you can see I have some left sides and some right sides of the upper half of the large poster. And then I finish the small posters on a small press. And we finish the large posters with some cast Ludlow type. So this is metal type that I cast at my studio, and I finish the large posters with that and some wood type. These are the small posters. They've been folded down to about that size. And then the large posters were just wheat pasted around the venue. This is wood type, a set of wood type that I have in actually 7 sizes. I'm only using 6 on this poster, but I have 7 different sizes of the same wood type, which is, it's quite cool to play around with because you can, it's not so usual that you have so many different sizes of one face that is so specific like this one. The detox. I'm teaching my own summer program in Switzerland. I've been doing this since 2016. Since 2021, I've had a satellite at the HMCT in Pasadena, and this is also where I just come from. So I was teaching this now called typographic printing program. It was called summer program when I just had it in the summer. Now I also have it in the winter. So every year I make a poster for that. And last year, the idea was to have the typographic detox. So I was exploring different ways of how can I make that or visualize that detox, the cleaning, the white on white, and I had something like 30 different kinds of papers that I tried out to print with white on. And they all look like gray when you print. So I ended up with this transparent paper. I'm on the laser cutter using linoleum, and I'm engraving pixels here. Sorry for the wild video, I got carried away with this one. So, but the interesting thing here, I'm making a side correct lino cut. You can read the detox, and in letterpress printing, this is a no-go. You always want to have your shapes reversed. But the reason for that is I'm printing on a transparent paper, and I'm printing on the back. So you see it, it's flipped, but then I will flip it back over. And I make the composition of the metal type. Casting this type takes about at least a day, if not 2. Now, probably a day for this, and then the composition takes a few hours.
You have your own caster?
Yeah, yeah. I cast on the Ludlow because the Ludlow can go quite big. You don't see ink on this type because it's silver. I'm printing with silver. And then you can see me flipping over the sheets and printing on the now front. So the idea of this poster, and let me pull one out, is that since there's a lot of bad typography to be found in this world, if you see anything that you dislike, you can totally take this poster and detox your environment. And depending on what you are hanging this poster over, it has more or less contrast. It is glossy on the back, but then matte on the front. I'm detoxing the thermal poster.
The paper is a vellum.
Yeah, it's a vellum-like transparent paper. Yes. But you know, sometimes the vellum doesn't fold nicely, it leaves these, and this one was okay for folding. It's also quite thin. So I use different papers for all of my projects, depending on if it's going to be wheat pasted in the city, depending on if it's going to be folded, or if it's like more something like a commemorative or archival thing. So the paper in Switzerland, if I order paper, I can get any paper within 24 hours. It's quite a luxury, so I can really order paper for what I need it for. The Kunststipendium was for the art stipends of the city of Zurich, and they asked me, would you be willing to make that poster for us? We need 36 different artists' names on this poster. And I'm like, sure, can you tell me why you get to me? And they said like, well, we know your work is typographic, and we were hoping you could make these 36 names big. Because in years before, they had something like a nice illustration and then 36 or however many names hidden somewhere, and they said, we would like to have a year where we have the names of the artists as big as possible, and for that I need perspective. These posters are large. I'm going to pull out one, and I printed, or we, I have to say we, because I couldn't do it on my own. My employees helped me with that, and my interns. We printed 400 of these in 23 print runs each. So each one of these posters went through the press 23 times. You will not see 23 colors on this poster, right? But you can see the gloss. And in letterpress printing and the ink coverage, it is blue paper. I mean, to get blue paper and to get the city of Zurich to accept to wheat paste blue paper, I mean solid blue paper in the city, it takes quite some convincing. And then to get the coverage, I need to hit this pink 6 times, this line 6 times, this pink 6 times, then twice the dark red, twice the dark red, and then I have a little 4-point signature at the bottom that you're welcome to find if you want to.
Yeah, because you're not really explaining that those posters are pasted in the streets and that they have to make them wet, right?
Yes.
And fold them.
Oh yeah, they're wheat pasted, yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
so they have to fold it also,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, absolutely.
You had the...
No, you don't see that.
No?
Once it's wheat pasted, they're super smooth.
Oh.
But what is important, the people that see these posters in the street, they might not know that these are letterpress printed in the craziest way. And I don't care. I don't care. I don't want to justify the quality of my posters through the process, but because I'm using such a complicated process and because I'm using these weird restrictions of my machines, the poster looks like it looks. One thing, I'm using Occidenzgrotesk and Helvetica on this poster. A total no-go, right? You wouldn't have complained, now you know. Can you delete this from the video? So, because I don't have Occidenzgrotesk in bold extended in metal type. So I have to use it. I didn't like Helvetica in bold extended on the large digital face that I use for this, so I make the compromise. Also, this poster is split into two halves, right? So you have the upper half and the lower half. This is a technical issue. On my press, I could not print the whole poster in one run. I have to split the motif somewhere. It doesn't have to be all centered, it could go a little further down. But it's a technical issue. And again, I designed the poster so this is part of my language that I want to use. And again, probably nobody would complain that it is split in the center. It's part of the design.
Is that well format?
This is Letterform, yeah. This is 4-point metal type. Nachtshift was a poster I did for a night shift. So it was a night shift where we printed stacks and stacks of poster over one night. This poster has been printed with vertical pieces of chipboard on the press. So I'm printing just the vertical stripes of chipboard or strips of chipboard, and then I print the type in a second run. These are small posters. Schicht, Nachtschicht, this means night shift, but Schicht also means layering. So there's a wordplay in that poster that doesn't translate. So it's not just the stacks of poster, it's also the layers of poster that you see building up. This poster is from 2011. In 2018, I found it. Somebody stole it and made iPhone cases with it. It was available on Amazon. Of course, I bought one. Have your own iPhone case. They also made ugly shirts. Yeah, shit happens. I want to be talking a little bit about a folder that is also here in the archive, at the Letterform archive. It was a project I started or I did during COVID, in the first wave of COVID, 2020. Of course, like many others, I lost all of my projects that I was working on. I didn't have any upcoming jobs. I didn't have any money to make any projects. And A, needed something to do, and B, needed some money. So whenever I hit that situation, I create a project that hopefully in the future will pay me back a little bit. So I right at the beginning of the pandemic, I felt like it's definitely interesting or weird times ahead, and we all have and have had these situations where we were like, so what is this now? Or where is this all going? And I wanted to document these moments. And I called the series The Absurdity of the Moment, like the moment when you had to do whatever, follow whatever rules for the first time, until 2 weeks later it was just normal, right? It's fine, and then the next thing comes up. So this was the final series. We have it here. We can look at it after in the physical posters. It was important for me that I would not find the one that is going about the mask. I would not find this at the demo for anti-vaxxers or whatever. I really was, so it's all political, but I wanted it to keep light, not ridiculous, not ironic. So it was a lot of work on the content of these posters. Die Spirale des Egoismus, it means the spiral of egoism. And do you remember at the beginning of the pandemic when people would bulk buy toilet paper or whatever? And it's like, I was going to the supermarket and I wanted to buy 1 kilogram of rice because I never buy more than 1 kilogram. It's good forever. So I go to the supermarket and I see the half-empty shelves and there's 2 kilograms of rice left, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should. Oh no, I don't want to get drawn into the spiral of egoism. Mask on and off and on and off, and it gets more and more wrinkled until you put it back on again. Very important here. I didn't want to stop this poster here because then you could really misunderstand the whole thing. that I don't need to translate. Right? It's also one of my favorite hashtags on Instagram. The absurdity of the moment, or the Absurdität des Moments, I just wanted to create something visually confusing. 0 hugs given. Social distance. These are all expressions. I mean, super spreader, I don't need to explain. Quarantaine means the people that cheat on the quarantine time. They would say like, well, I did 10 days or however many we had to do. And the Impfdrängler are the people that cut in line to get the vaccination sooner. And it's all printed on a mirror paper, so maybe some people would reflect themselves in one of them. Who needs the economy if we've got clicks and likes? It's just like, I'm panicking. The economy is being shut down completely. Will I ever be able to do my job again? And then in the evening, I just sit on the couch and check how many likes I got today, which is ridiculous. The worst is yet to come. Everything will be all right. That's the full series. Oh, sorry. For whatever reason, it's not. It's not on purpose. This says 3 kisses, no more. In Switzerland, when we said hello, we would give 3 kisses, and that just doesn't exist. And I think like this one, I wanted to say like, well, maybe you're happy that this is not happening anymore. But while on the other hand, this 0 hugs given is more something like, well, I miss the hugs, right? So it was a similar topic, but a different thing about it. So there I wanted to show like the person that you're like, I don't need these 3 kisses. Another poster for the band Über You. It's hand-cut linoleum and then laser engraved linoleum, and that just, you need to see this poster in real life after the presentation. So the laser cut linoleum really doesn't reproduce nicely, but in a very interesting way, these halftones. I'm just gonna skip through some shorter projects. This was a project for some industrial designers working with the most produced chair. Let me go one further. With the most produced chair before 1960, which is the Toned Bentwood chair that was produced in Austria and then distributed all over the planet. The most produced chair after 1960 is the monoblock chair. Normally it's white, and you all know this chair. It takes 2 seconds to produce. It takes 2 kilograms of plastic, and it costs €2.50 to produce one. And it's a waste of resources. We find that in every sea, in every landfill, wherever we find that, and it's an ugly piece, right, we would say. But back in the 1960s, this was a design chair. Like if you had several hundreds of years of history, or maybe even thousands of years of wooden chairs, and then one person comes up with this wobbly plastic thing that is cast from one piece, this is crazy. And it was expensive. It's just been overproduced. And they said, we want to create a new classic that is 3D printed from PVC, recycled PVC. That's where the color scheme comes from. And we don't know what it will look like. Can you make a poster? So you basically just use the reference images. 100 years of Kulturgesellschaft. Kulturgesellschaft is a cultural association. They make theaters and concerts. And they come to me, can you make a poster for us? And sure. What do you want to have on that poster? Well, 100 years of our cultural association. Like, cool, but is there anything else we could say? Like, do you maybe like since 1920 we have been blah blah blah? Oh no, just 100 years of cultural association. So I have to work with that 100 and just make it a happy birthday party. This poster was produced with kitchen magnets, the ones you find at Target. And I was producing this poster when I was teaching. I was teaching at VCU in Richmond, Virginia for a year, and I didn't have access to type. So I had to find a way to make the type. The problem with the type is it only comes site correct. So if I print it, it's going to be reversed. And I don't hide the fact that some of the letters are reversed. I use this as my visual topic by doubling up and making these crazy glyphs, because again, if this is my problem, I make the problem my topic. Neu was a poster for a new German design magazine. They started a printed magazine in 2021. So, which I think is super cool, but it's also a little bit against time, right? You start a printed magazine in the year 2021. So I wanted to work with the history and the future, or just the two things. They used the posters for the first, for the Kickstarter campaign, and then they also printed, which I didn't print, but I designed the cover of the very first issue. I think they're up to issue 12 or so right now. These posters were printed with raglets, so I bumped up the raglets to type height here. The raglets are the pieces that we used in traditional typesetting to filling up the white space. So it is a very important part of our typographic systems. It defines proportions, and I want to show the history of type because it's graphic design. So I'm using, and you see I do the color separation here. So I numbered all the fields, and it was quite a plan. And then I mount all these pieces, these raglets, for the first color, which I think might have been the pink.
How do you stick the raglet onto the board there?
Say it again?
Tape? How do you stick the raglet onto the board?
With double-sided.
Oh, just tape?
Well, flexo printing tape, yes. And then you can see the first run, which was, I think, the pink. And there were several runs with all these colors, and then I overprinted this with white, and that handwriting was done with the computer cursor just directly on my display. So I wanted to bring together the history and the new or the digital world. Also important for me was I wanted to make a very colorful poster. I didn't, because you can see raglet printing very often with just black or dark ink on a light substrate. Typographic pollution was the one that came before the detox. So stop typographic pollution. And maybe you say this is typographic pollution, that's your decision. But if I'm talking about pollution, I need to show pollution. That's very important. I mean, I work with semantic typography and I want to connect the message or the content to the visuals. And if I'm talking about pollution, I need to make something that is disturbing, weird contrast, weird typeface combinations, and of course I stretch the typefaces, always. Does anybody know what typeface I used on this one? So I met this German typographer at the conference, and we were talking about typefaces, and I said, like, well, I don't like typeface bashing. I'm not gonna say this typeface is bad or good. I just want to see good applications, and I still believe that with any type you can make some good designs. It might be more work with a type that is not as balanced as other. So he said, well, cool, but you would not make a poster with Comic Sans. So this is his poster with Comic Sans. I'm gonna skip or just not comment on all of that posters because of time. Maybe this a little bit. This was for a type foundry, and they said, can you make a specimen sheet for our new typeface? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, sure, but it all looks like spots, right? And yeah, it's more like an experiment of legibility, and so, can you do it? And I'm like, sure, but I'm just gonna make them nice Dalmatian spots. A series for a local brewery. All hand-cut linoleum. poster, make love, not Tanzverbot, so it's a combination of languages again. Tanzverbot means dance prohibition, and there was an old law we had in Switzerland that you were not allowed to dance on Christmas Day, or also the evening before. You're not allowed to dance. You're allowed to go out, you're allowed to consume alcohol, you're allowed to listen to some music, but you just can't do this. So, I mean, we did parties every year, and we had to pay quite a big fine for making these parties, but we said, well, we're gonna do it anyways. So, there was a vote going on to cancel this law, and this was the club's program for while this vote was on.
Did they cancel it?
Yeah, it's done. Dada Gaga. Dada melts into Gaga. Maybe a little bit about this poster. I had a previous poster done for a club, and they didn't proofread it. And I mean, come on, I'm typesetting this. I'm sending them photos of the typesetting, saying, please get back to me within a few hours. I have it typeset on the press. Yeah, it's all good. Then we have typos on the poster, the previous one. And I deliver 500 posters on a Friday. They say, great, thanks. But 3 of the bands cannot come. We had to cancel 3 of the shows on the poster. So I'm like, hey, but this is the physical world, right? So it's not a Facebook announcement where you can change the name of the DJ last minute. We have to stick to what we agree on Tuesday, not 3 weeks ago, on Tuesday. So I said on the new poster, I'm gonna cancel all of the events. So it says, canceled, moved to a bigger spot, too expensive, they split up, it's moved, canceled the tour, it's not gonna happen, and rehab. And then you always have alternative events. Also, all of the big stars have a typo in them. A, I didn't want to get in trouble with the management, of course. B, if you don't proofread, there's gonna be typos on your poster. I think I'm gonna show you this poster in the physical world. This was for Tipoteca, which is a type archive and museum in Italy, and they were celebrating their 25th anniversary. And I wanted to visualize that the 24 years just went by so fast. So the 25 you can definitely read, right? But maybe the stuff at the top you can't read. It's almost impossible to read. So you might walk past this poster and say, I didn't get it completely. And hopefully you're looking back, and then the perspective helps you to de-stretch the type on the top. It's all hand-cut linoleum. Even the small orange type at the bottom is hand-cut linoleum. Some posters for my summer program. Coming back with this one. They're all double-sided. Join the cult of type. Making this, and I really ask you to look at this in real life afterwards. Making these kinds of justified layouts on the Ludlow, it takes about 2 days of casting and then making justifications, do negative kernings. The system, because I'm forcing the justified layout, you see here, the system is even more complex because I say wherever one paragraph stops, I start with the next one. And I stop here and I go with the next one. This one is a title, and then here I go with the next one. So if you change one word in this composition, even on the computer, it takes you a long time till you fixed it all down. And I have to simulate it with a typeface that is pretty close to the actual casting that I'm doing later. So this is at least 3 days of work just to get it typeset on the physical press. It's printed on black paper. Kotzfrucht in der Zitrone. Kotzfrucht is the name of the band, and Kotzfrucht is the fruit durian. Do you know this fruit? It's from Thailand, I think, and it smells very strongly. And the literal translation of this word, and that's the word we have for this fruit in the German language, means vomit fruit. That's the name in German. So that's the name of the band, and Zitrone is the name of the venue, which means lemon. So for me, I mean, this is just perfect. You have the name of a band that is a special fruit, and you have the name of the venue that's also a fruit, and then I just squeeze that vomit fruit into the lemon. This is all a lino cut. To make this cup, it's roughly pretty much a day. So I design most of these posters obviously on the computer, but there's always a back and forth if there are analog elements involved. This one was designed completely on the computer because there's no analog elements involved other than cutting. And whatever I can design in that size on the computer, I can later cut, that's no problem. My employee was not at the studio when I did this cut, and the next day she said, "Why is there glue on the table?" She knew I had a miscut on this one.
How much time does this represent?
That's a day. Yeah. So I want to say from maybe, I don't know, yeah, just a day.
What do you listen when you do that?
Here I think I was on the phone actually, but designing I don't listen to any music. Producing I can totally listen to music. I don't like digital music. I like real music coming from analog devices. So if I'm on the headphones, I'm just talking to somebody on the phone. WTF, I finished the lecture up with this one, is one piece of linoleum cut. It was for a residency I had in New York City in 2014. And at that time I was living with my family in Richmond, Virginia. We had a 1981 Oldsmobile that we drove up to New York. I love this car. And between Jersey City and Manhattan in the Holland Tunnel, the car broke down with my wife, our two little daughters in the car. And it's just like at rush hour, and you're like, oh no, that's not happening right now. So I needed a topic to make a poster later. So that was the WTF. I want this poster to be irritating, hypnotizing, visually hypnotic. So it's all hand-cut linoleum, and then just one single run on the press. So printing on this one is quite easy. Cutting is, I think this one was a night shift, so. I mean, it's the same amount of time as a day, just shifted. And I'm also asking you to look at this in real life, and I want you to tell me if it is really doing this. Because I believe if you look at it for long enough, it really starts vibrating and moving until you think like, I can't take it no more, WTF. All right, just a few projects to finish up that is worth looking into. One is babyingtwice.ch, that's my webpage with all of the projects that you can find, all my posters. All of the posters, not all of them, but the posters that are still available, you can buy them through the webpage. I also have copies with me that I'm willing to sell if anybody's interested in that. What's this, if you need that?
You should change your name to Baby 6 times.
Well, maybe, yeah, or 23 times. Insta, of course, y'all. I'm not gonna skip until you all photograph that. My book, True Print, came out in 2016 with Lars Müller Publishers. It's been a real challenge to produce that, because if you have all physical work and you need it printed in so many runs and all of that, to reproduce that in offset printing is a lot of work. I mean, you know, here at the Letterform Archive, you know how that is. This book has been printed in 8 colors. So if you have a split fountain on any of these images, you need to make that split fountain in Photoshop. You add a second layer, or let's say a 5th layer with Dayglow, and then it's been printed in 8 colors. So you're welcome to look at this here, and of course, it's available still, the last few copies, so if you want to buy that, photograph that. Typographic printing program, my program that I'm doing in Switzerland. It's a 2-week intense class. I've had more than 100 participants over the last 6 years, including the COVID years, and they've been from 22 different countries so far. That's worth looking into also. And I have my satellites here at the HMCT in Pasadena. That's a shorter session, that's just a 1-week session. And then, do we have time to watch one of these episodes? Can we do that? That's 4 minutes.
4 minutes, yeah.
Yeah. Can we turn up the volume?
Yes.
So, because I developed so many different printing techniques over the past years, I wanted to find a way to document that, but also make it freely available. What does it help if I create the brushstroke technique if nobody can use it because nobody knows about it besides seeing my poster, and then they all think it's offset printed? So I needed to find a way to document that, and that's the printing show. There's 11 episodes online right now, and we're gonna watch episode number 1. And then you're welcome to ask questions. Maybe we can look at the work that is here, because I didn't bring those, and then there's other work on the other. Welcome to the printing show. My name is Dafi Kühne. Very often I get mail from people asking, how do you do this? So, for example, this from Mr. Jim S. from Nashville, Tennessee. Dear Dafi, how did you do the plastic type you used on the True Print poster? Well, Jim, I'll show you. I was facing a big challenge. I didn't have enough time to typeset all the words I needed on this poster. But I had an existing set of metal type. I just needed more characters. So I developed this technique of casting plastic type. So I take the pieces of metal type that I want to duplicate, and I mount them with double-sided tape in a little form I built with wood pieces. I'm using my 2-component silicone to then make a mold. Shake it well. Delicious. Oh yeah. I just pour it evenly over my metal type and make sure they're all colored. And let this cure for about 6 hours. Well, since we don't have 6 hours, obviously I prepared one for you.
Yeah.
But what we have here is the casting mold made from silicone with our original metal type inside. And we use this mold to then cast some plastic type that will withstand the pressure of printing. Well, now we open the form. then I carefully pull out the metal type. It's a little bit like pulling teeth. And there we have our casting mold that we now can use to cast as many pieces of type as we want. What we have here is some 2-component plastic resin that I use for casting the type. So from now on, I have something like 2 minutes. So let this cure for about 20 minutes. But obviously, I prepared one for you.
Yay.
So we can go right on. Pulling teeth again. So all we need to do now is to trim down the type. Once the letters are trimmed, make sure they're really type high when you trim them. Yes, 23.57, ditto height. So if we did a proper job, we can now mix and match the metal type and the new cast plastic type. And now we just proof it. So, Mr. Chimes from Nashville, this is my plastic type. That's all magic. Good luck trying it. If you've got any more questions, send me a letter. So this series won a Swiss Design Award in 2021. In my job, it is very important that I can't rely on the fact that my work is letterpress printed, because actually nobody really cares about that so much in Switzerland. It's really the process and the limitations that I work with. They are my playground to develop my designs. And of course, the quality of the print itself is something that I believe is different from just if I had it printed. I want to have the full autonomy about the whole process. So thanks a lot for having me here at the Letterform Archive. It's been an honor speaking in front of such a well-behaved audience. If you have questions, now you can shoot them at me. I'm ready for that.
When you complete an edition, are you permitted, as part of your understanding, the scope of your work, to revisit it and do a second edition?
Yes, this is in the contract with my clients, but I will let them know that I'm printing a second edition. It also depends if they have a numbered edition. Because, for example, the ones that for the city of Zurich, they're not numbered. I mean, I would just let them know, hey, is it okay for you if I print another edition? And the answer has always been so far, yes, of course. But if they say, we are releasing a limited edition of a book, and we need 100 numbered and signed prints, of course I'm not gonna do this. That's not gonna work. So that is a little bit of depending on what kind of project it is. Also, if I'm printing, let's say a client needs 200 posters, or let's say 1,200 posters, I need additional copies for my portfolio, for collections, for well, just these two, and for competitions, design competitions. So I need at least 30 copies, nice copies on top of that. That's just feeding archives that buy my work on a regular base, collectors, and my portfolio and competitions. And then on top of that, I let them know I will do additional sales copies. That's what I brought with me. So that's part of the contract also. And also here, even if some of the clients make these posters to sell them, the brewery that I just skipped through, they make these posters and they sell them at their brewery. But I mean, they don't mind if I sell some of these posters also. It's their name on that poster. So, so far, none of my clients have ever said like it's impossible to do that.
Do you save your linoleum masters?
Yes, I do, but some of them are reduction cuts. The
Sure.
0 Hux Given, I am printing a second edition right now, and it's a complete suicide cut. So you gotta start new with it, and it's gonna look different. And of course, the second edition will be labeled as the second edition. That's another important thing. So if anybody buys the first edition, it will say maybe nothing or first edition, but if it's the second edition, it will definitely say second edition. Yeah. But there's other elements that I can't save, like if I compose with physical type, or if I cast type, I'm gonna melt that in. Yes, I have a big archive of cuts. Yeah.
Maybe we can get up and look at the posters now.
Yeah, let's finish with this one.
Another
Yeah.
question.
When you said that no one cares when it's letterpress printing in Switzerland, where do you think people do care? I'm not a printer, but I mean,
Sure.
so do you think, because you taught in the United States,
Yeah.
like what is the sort of international?
Well, I
perspective on
think the
that?
difference might be if you are doing something that looks like it is letterpress printed, which my work doesn't specifically look like it is letterpress printed. But I think other letterpress practitioners rely more on the fact that you see that it is letterpress printed. A lot of the work that we see, not judging that work, but a lot of the work that we see in letterpress looks like it's letterpress printed. And these printers rely on that fact. Because if we can digitally simulate that and do the same thing, that doesn't work. So the layouts that I make don't look like letterpress, and that's what I want to achieve. Does that make sense? Yeah.
What's the weirdest material you've printed on?
Printed on or with?
On. Like using the letterpress.
Well, printing on would be the substrate, the paper that I print with on. And that is not so crazy because it always has to wrap around a cylinder. Unlike in silkscreen printing, where you could say, I print on a wall or I print on glass. That I can't do. So anything I want to print needs to somehow wrap around a cylinder. So it's not so crazy, it's maybe chipboard or it's just some colored paper or some very glossy stuff. The, I think, more interesting question would be what would be the craziest material you printed with or from. And that, please watch all of the printing show episodes and then you decide. Okay? All right, why don't we shift over there? Would Stephen be willing to show?
Yeah, I'm gonna.